I get the lucky task of the opening act. Having said that, the main actors are those two, which is why I'm going to start at the end of the act, so don't rely a lot on me. I run engineering and storage infrastructure calls, engineering mostly from an integration perspective, and I've got my co-conspirator and or our partner in crime, as we call it, Patrick here, who heads digital engineering, and Elena, who's been an instrumental lead in driving the transformation and the evolution we've driven. So, without boring you a lot, I am keen to understand if this works. How many of you, it doesn't work? Okay. Maybe I just don't know how to make it work. Technology. How many one of those? How many of you remember this situation? Been in governance meetings? Trying to justify long testing cycles? Why are we still testing? Why is it red? Mostly it's testing red, but how many of you know testing is usually not the root cause? I'm sure we're right? We're the ones who test it, right? And there are times when testing is the root cause, isn't it? Oops, we do have that. Now, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. We went through a very similar journey 2 years ago when we all decided to look at testing at Coles. It was about 550 applications. Usually a change would go through about 34 endpoints. Anything that you want to touch, it's probably a few months before you can even think about doing anything more. There was automation, don't get me wrong, there was enough of it. There was lots of work happening. We had a pretty hefty capital plan, lots of projects. Now, for those of you who are in the project world would say, yeah, that's okay, but I'm a product team. I don't care. I go fast. I'm agile. I've got continuous delivery. I've got CI/CD rock solid. My architecture is amazing. Still, end-to-end testing catches you, doesn't it? It is, you always get caught in end-to-end testing. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. How many of you? I want to know who hasn't gone through this. I'm curious. Because I want you to come up here and work with us. To make it happen more often. So this was the problem we were trying to solve. They said we didn't have a quality issue in production because we were absolutely rock solid in making sure we were managing risk well. So our production downtime was okay, we change failure rates were like less than 1%. With a change going through almost every second day or every few hours in production, with 500 odd applications, we had it down pat. But it manifested itself as cost or time. So when we wanted deployments in production and features in the hands of customers like you who are working on our apps and trying to order groceries, and you really wanted that sort feature. God, guess what? We had it about 3 months earlier, but it was in development. It was deployed. It was in testing. So we found a problem that we needed to solve, which is how do we get features in the hands of customers faster? So you can have convenience in shopping, you can have groceries on time, on shelves, and you can get availability and all of that. When we were trying to solve that, we realized everyone kept telling us you can't have it all. The triad, like was classic, cost, time, quality. You can't have it all. I can tell you what happens. You can have it all. You can get good quality, you can have it on time, but you can do it at a manageable cost. And we did it. All up in 2 years, about when we started, and we didn't centralize testing, the silver bullet. Usually a lot of large organizations use, they centralize testing, and it's somebody else's problem. Isn't it? But then it's not theirs. It is somebody else's problem. Testing centralized, everything's looking good. What we needed to do was find a solution that was sustainable. So when some of us are not here, and it's not a centralized testing service, how do we ensure it keeps running? How do we ensure we're still managing that triad effectively and not continuously throwing people at it or increasing cost of projects? Some of you have been on large projects. Average burn rate on a project which runs another month late is usually between, anyone? Between how many $1,000? Any guesses?
500,000, 600,000.
True. There are some large projects like that. So anywhere between a few hundred thousand to a few thousand to a few hundred thousand. And usually when you find issues in testing, that's the cost of quality. Cost of quality is not the testing cost. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that problem. That's what we were trying to solve. We did not go and say, let's reduce cost of testing. Because cost of testing was quite optimal. Because it was manifesting itself in cost of projects, which were getting late, or cost of features that never got to the customer's hands in time, and you were very unhappy with this. So we decided we wanted to show off the code. And we decided one large conversation to pick to say, how do we fix this problem in the area which is hurting us the most? We prioritized ruthlessly and ensured there was just one thing we targeted. How do we get features in the hands of customers faster, especially from an e-commerce experience perspective, given post-COVID, a lot of you wanted to shop online. And we started engineering for quality. The target we took, we packed together, was no QA. A friend of mine was telling me there's a large airline in Australia went and mandated there will be no testing. Developers, you will need to deploy to production and take the heat. Guess what? They never had vendors. But it was easy to do then. Try doing that with 500 applications, and when you try to test 300 or endpoints, not a good idea to do, because you would be screaming at us to say, no, that never works. I cannot place orders. I cannot go to store and get toilet paper. Well, that would be the issue if we tried to do no QA, straight up. So we went on a journey and decided that we will not centralize testing. That was a big call we took early on. I was hired for centralized testing, and I chose not to. So I got a lot of flack at the start. But we decided that we would do it in a sustainable manner, where we will work with each team to help them be on that journey at their pace, because not every organization and not every team wants to be on that journey with you, because there's no imperative. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. So we decided we will go and work with advocates who are wanting to solve this problem with us, want a bit of a solution. We worked with them to accelerate and set up a center for enablement. I'm continuing to run with a 3-member team. That's it. We started with a 3-member team, we still have a 3-member team. And testing hasn't grown materially at Coles either. But we've delivered about 100 times faster, especially in our digital space. And we made sure that wherever we've gone and done this with them, they have an understanding of how to do this ongoing without the need for this team. So that was our motto when we said we would evolve and not just transform, because transform ends somewhere. We needed to continuously evolve. So the target still is no QA, continuous testing, and to be able to get to continuous testing, we needed some really, really smart people and some really strong partners. So my partner in crime in this instance was Elena and Jerome, who's somewhere in the audience or around the conference, who were our absolute anchors in driving this transformation. So I will let the main actors talk about it. And then the reason you got Pat today is to tell you that I'm not lying. This isn't just my figment of imagination. He's seen the value of it, and he can talk you through what happened when he worked with us to be able to drive this, and how did he feel at the end of being able to get faster features in production. So handing over to Elena.
Thank you, And as Sakshi was saying, she freaks me out by changing your shoulder size. Yeah, no, all good. As she was saying, we were having to understand our real problem first, and our problem was not a quality one, right? So there's a lot of money being thrown at all sorts of change across the software development lifecycle to make sure we don't have a quality problem. But what we did have was a cost of quality and a speed problem. So when we went out and we talked to people and they gave us all this anecdotal conversation around what their challenges were, one of the main things we did first off was challenge assumptions, right? Because you can, if it is a quality problem, you need to go down the center of excellence pathway. But that was not what we found. So it's really important as you start this journey not to take anything for granted, not to just take that anecdotal conversation that comes at you, but rather challenge, baseline, understand what your problem really is, and then and only then do you step in. Because it may not have been self-evident, but I know you guys would have all been through the journey. It's not easy to go from QA to QE and transform a workforce of over 500 people. Yeah, it's hundreds of people, right? That are very test-centric and quality assurance, reactive quality assurance centricity to engineering for quality. It's not an easy journey. So you have to have tough conversations. You have to have, provocative conversations. So if you're going to do that, do it for the right reason. as Sakshi was saying, our original view was that we would have centralised testing. By the time I got there, that was off the table. So then how do we then enact this? What are our alternative modes of doing that? And because we're not mandating conformance to all the things that we're going to drive, and we're instead trying to influence for adoption, the way we decided to do that was to have different models. One solution doesn't fit all, right? So there are different teams working on progressive application stacks. There are teams working on application stacks that were born before me, right? And everyone's familiar with that paradigm. And on those, they're more traditionalist testing approaches as opposed to teams that are already quality engineering enabled, that are already on that continuous test journey, but have big rocks like test data, like environments for that very complex ecosystem that they can't solve on their own. It's too big a problem. It's a multi-million-dollar problem to solve at an enterprise scale. So what we did is we had 3 different engagement models to really encourage and influence adoption as a service for some of those teams that had some engineering capability and that could adopt the shared services and capabilities that we were building out. Fully self-service. So if you're a digitally enabled team with a lot of engineering capability and you've got your quality advocates within that, fantastic. Here's our repos, here's our shared services, here's our capability, go forth. Go forth, use them in anger, help us iterate on them, help us build an even better solution. Fantastic, that we will then share back with everybody else. Right? And then the final one, all those more traditional teams that are going to need us to actually take them on the journey. Show them how to go from QA to QE, not just from a technology perspective, but also the fundamentals, process, and also people, right? So take them on the whole journey and guide them through. But as Sakshi was saying, we're a 3-people team. So our whole objective is to get in, enable in all of those 3 models, and jump out again. Because it's not our objective to proliferate ourselves, but rather to proliferate the passion, the QE, and the adoption of QE. All right, so what I alluded to before, there are 3 different prongs to all of this. There are people, there are processes, and there is obviously technology, right? Technology is our happy place. We all love to innovate. Everyone who has that software engineering background, that's where we want to be, right? Hands on keyboard, nutting out code, that's the fun part. But in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to enact that continuous test paradigm, you need the right people. You need the right people with the right skills in the right place. So how did we actually go from a predominantly quality assurance focused workforce to a quality engineering centric one? There's 2 main streams in that. And so we had a very diverse partner ecosystem, not partners, vendors. So we needed to consolidate that. And in that journey, we brought through our constructs, partners, true partners. 3 strategic partners, 2 niche partners. And what we wanted from them was someone to support us through innovation. We wanted to be able to leverage their brain's trust. We wanted to give them a view of the skill set that we needed them to bring into Coles, right? Obviously it takes a little bit of time. You can't do this and have that happen overnight. So it's a little bit of a journey. Now, defining with them the position descriptions for quality engineers. Because when I say quality engineer, I'm sure that if I asked, I'd get different answers as to what people think of quality engineering is. Right? And for me, and I get asked this quite often, we are software engineers. We just happen to have a massive passion and advocacy for testing. Right? So we are testing SMEs. We are test automation SMEs. We are normally very proficient developers in 1 or 2 languages. At Coles, it's predominantly Java with a little bit of JavaScript and C#. Right? So that is what a quality engineer is. Defining that, making sure that our partners have that consensus view, going to bring that workforce to play for us, right? Over time, it takes a little while, right? The other part of this, and it's equally as important, is your permanent workforce, right? So there's a lot of really valuable domain understanding in your permanent workforce. You do not want to lose that, right? So, but within that permanent workforce, there are often people who have what I call latent tech cred. They are people who are software programmers or software engineers in their previous lives. You want to help them go on that journey of rediscovering that particular side of their capability set. So you have to create a pathway, right? You have to create a pathway, a learning pathway for them and learning opportunities, which is the other thing that we did. So we have a quality engineering learning pathway that we encourage our permanent people to go on. There's a few different modes for that, but that's Also about bringing an outside-in perspective as well. So one of the other things we do is a learning circle once a quarter where we ask our strategic partners to come in, where we ask vendors to come in and showcase not just what they'd like to do at Coles, but what are they doing more broadly, trying to get that cohort really, really excited. And now that we have a little bit more maturity and we have what I think is critical mass in our quality engineering community, we have a community of practice as well, where we bring together and we live the ethos of having them all contribute to the same shared services and capabilities. They help inform the backlog. It's very collaborative, right, across all the different areas, digital included as well as all the technology areas. So that is this particular facet.
I'll just add a quick. I'll just add another quick pointer to the partnerships. I think the key thing around partnering is not just having a partner in the sense of having a panel, having contracts, having red card. It's about shared goals. Our partners have shared goals, which means their service levels and KPIs match ours. And their remuneration and or their payments are structured in such a way that they meet and achieve the same goals as us. So we're driving a sustainable change. So what we don't want them to do is go against that ethos. That was the key in the partnerships. It wasn't just consolidation. Sorry.
All good. And I did forget that point. All right. So the next part is around technology. So this is the exciting part, right? This is the fun part. So, but in equal parts, there was a lot of, sorry about that, there was a lot of angst when we first came in, at least for myself, right? One of the things we discovered during that conversation with all the various stakeholders, as an example, was that we had over a dozen Java code frameworks for web app and API test automation. You can hear by the sound of my voice how sad that made me. Everyone so proud of how they had built it from scratch. And you're just like, go, you need to talk to each other. You should have all been iterating on each other's work, leveraging a core library that you all build on. So it was one of the examples that we use and we talk about, right? Because that's one of the first things we did. We took the best of breed, we matured it, we now have a jar library in Artifactory that everybody pulls. That is what we form the backlog around, right? That is what we build on. And it's that ethos that we've taken to all our shared services and capabilities, especially the bigger rocks, right? So yes, we found our pattern repetition. Yes, we've found our gaps for things like test data and environment management, and we've gone out and we've done our research and purchased tools that will allow us to solve this at an enterprise level. So solving for test data is not easy. Being able to refresh across a value stream from production in minutes so that you can do on-demand data refreshes, it's not an easy paradigm. So we're on that journey, and we've purchased a tool called Delphix to do that. And in our first case study, we now refresh from production over 4 terabytes in less than 5 minutes. Right, so it is our ideal that we're going to do that now more in a more proliferated fashion across our value stream. Right, so it's those sorts of things, and you're looking at how we progressively coordinate some of that technology deployments, right? So it's things like Go Live for our environment management, our release management, being able to provide data-centric and decisions, right? So it's all managed by fact, managed by data. That's some of the predicate that lies under our technology solutions. But yes, it's about standardizing those common patterns. And I love that people were so proud that they built it from scratch, but go build something I don't have from scratch. Don't go and duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate, I don't even know if that's a word, but don't do it, right? So that was one of our big lessons from that. One of the other things I forgot to mention though, when you're doing a technology journey and you're wanting everyone to coalesce about that, the thing that helped us be successful is we partnered with our architects. So we partnered with the solution architects. They already had all of the forums that we needed to be able to socialize our strategic tooling patterns, right? To go out and say, these are the strategic tools that we want all of you to converge on, right? So we had those forums that we could easily go to because we very much became really collaborative with those architects. We went to the CTO forum to get that endorsed. We went to the head of forum to get those things endorsed. And then we went to the people that actually deploy things. There's 3 different levels at Coles for all of those architectural forums. But why reinvent that, or why try and establish your own forums where you can leverage that. So our architects are another co-conspirator group for us that are very big advocates of what we're doing and make sure that when they're solutioning for things, that they have us front of mind as well. So we are in constant contact with our architects. So that was the other point that I wanted to make. In all parts of this journey, you want to find people that are like-minded. You want to find people that are as passionate about all of this and have the same zealotry as you do for it, right? So the architects were one of those groups for us. Okay. Lastly, and this was really surprising, when we did those original surveys of all the various groups, including the testers on the ground, what surprised us is that they were craving consistency in their 101 fundamentals. So some of the feedback we got in those sessions was, we want a consistent way of doing defect management. We want a consistent way of doing test management. I'm like, yeah, because that adds value. That means if we're all doing that consistently, that becomes the baseline for how we measure and how we govern, and we can do that with so much richness if everyone's doing defect management in the same way. So we, through a series of working groups, came up with a simplified defect management process in Jira, not revolutionary, but just consistency. Same from a test management perspective. Our strategic tool is Jira X-Ray, so simplified test management in Jira X-Ray. Right? And again, nothing that would floor anyone in this room, but it's just a common way of working. But again, to also encourage and influence adoption, we had to make it flexible. So not to say it's perfect, because it's not. Because of that flexibility, not everyone details the root causes in the way that we would like, in the way that my colleague Jerome would love, because he's building AI-based analytics off the root cause analysis, and it'd be so much better if they did it consistently. But we're on the journey, right? And that's one of the other points that she was making. It's not transformation, it's evolution, and we're on that evolution journey. So yeah, one of the other big parts of process, and Sakshi started to talk about it, is measurement and governance. And with our partners, holding them to account, holding ourselves to account against a common set of KPIs and SLAs, there's got to be skin in the game. Right? There's got to be contractual SLAs with a little bit of a punitive side to have skin on the game, to understand what risk they hold and what risk we hold. Right? So there's all of that in there. We have different layers of governance, but what we now have enabled across each of the teams where our partners are engaged, whether it's a product team or a project team, is visibility to a common set of metrics around quality, things like defect density across the software development lifecycle, things like defect leakage into production. We have that view month on month now against a baseline, so we know how much progress or regression has been made recently, and if there's regression, obviously how to step into it. Again, it's all about managing by fact. And it's simple, but it wasn't there before. And it's not necessarily something that attaches to quality engineering, but it's a foundation. Right? And one thing that does lead to, on that continuous test journey, is how much test automation coverage do I have? I need to quantify that. I need to know how much I'm building out. Am I doing this with the velocity I need to do this to reach my North Star or not? And if or not, is that because we've pragmatically made a decision that at this point in time, the investment's not there, not where it needs to be from a return on investment perspective, or are we not doing it with a lack of consciousness, right? So all the data that we grab from this then starts to feed into our continuous test journey as well. All right, and as I was saying, and as Sakshi was saying, it is imperative. I've spoken to you guys about the 3 pillars of people, process, and technology. I've let you guys know people is fundamental, getting the right people with the right skills in play to be able to adopt and proliferate your technology, and giving them consistent processes, controls, and measures and governance to work against is really, really important. But there's one ingredient that's equally as important, and that's having someone, as I was saying before, as passionate as you are about quality engineering, as passionate as about getting that paradigm in their own domain. I'm going to hand over to Patrick, who's definitely one of our advocates and co-conspirators, to talk a little bit about his journey, and as the head of digital engineering, he'll talk you through that in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me at the back as well? Yeah, because I always struggle with the mic. So I will just clarify one thing, because Sakshi did say sort of no QAs at some point. And I mean, for me, I always like to push the bounds. So for me, that's an end state, but whether we actually achieve that end state, it doesn't matter, right? For me, I like to be able to push my teams in my area. Let's just go to the limit. And is that limit appropriate for us? Maybe, maybe not. But for me, I like to set sort of, I guess, a lot more harder, audacious goals as well. So put that in the minds of people, and then what can we do to get there? So I just want to clarify that. So definitely do see quality champions and quality engineers a vital part of digital. So let's clear that one up first. And then the second one, I did have colourful slides, but they're being turned black and white as well. So, you know, being from digital, we kind of like colour, but it's sort of gone black and white as well.
Partner in crime comes with a cost.
A little bit, yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a case study that we did, or a transformation into quality engineering. But what I might do is I'll just take a step back and just talk about Coles Digital, because that's where I work. Yeah, so give you a little bit of context. So Coles Digital, if you kind of think about it, it really is looking at servicing our customers, not just from an online perspective, but also in-store. So when customers are within our shopping centres and so forth. And likewise, it also services our team members who are working in stores, fulfilling orders. So I don't know, hands up, who's done like a click and collect order from the store? Surely, yeah, there must be some, yeah. Hopefully you haven't had to wait too long. We do have an issue, I guess, with wait times that we are working on, and likewise with product substitutions, because I know that's the pet gripe for people when they get the wrong product. But we also service, I guess, our team members to be able to pick effectively. And then likewise, we're a real enabler for our marketing, so our customer areas, for a lot of things around in-store and online activations as well. So kind of a little bit of a broad one around Coles Digital. In terms of how we're structured, just give you a little bit of an insight. So think about it from the digital experiences, which I head up. So that's our main customer channels, which is coles.com.au. Hopefully some people have shopped on coles.com.au. Yeah, that's my baby. Built that one 3.5 years ago. I started that journey, so I'm super proud of that. And then we also have the Coles mobile app, so hopefully we've got some Coles mobile app users here as well. Can you shout out? Yep, awesome. And then we have what we call our picking application as well for our team members. So that's kind of at that experience, sort of that customer layer. Then underneath that, we'll have what we kind of call our channel services, and effectively a lot of this is all of the microservices, so to speak, that you're providing functionality for your channels. So things like, what are the items that you bought before from either an in-store shop or an online one, being able to search for products, being able to build your basket and so forth. And then we go down towards the third layer. It's kind of like our e-commerce sort of layout, really the workhorse around how do we fulfill an order, right from when it gets placed all the way through to our stores or to our CFCs that we've got, and then all the way through to getting delivered to customers. And then we'll have our platform engineering layer as well, and we'll have a data layer as well. So roughly it's probably around, be close to about 500 or so engineers, also from the quality engineers, just to give you a little bit of a view of the scale that we have at Coles Digital. And in terms of, we're all predominantly cloud-based, Microsoft Azure. We do have some on-prem software, which I think a lot of orgs still do, just purely from a legacy perspective. And we're probably pushing close to 100 microservices as well, just within Coles Digital, and there's obviously a lot more within the broader Coles ecosystem. And it is really complex, like a complex environment as well. And I will say there's always this anxiety, well, there's always this sort of, you know, I would say, Shakshi's area technology will look at us, well, previously as cowboys, you guys like just want to ship whatever you can, and we'll look at technology and we'll kind of go, you guys are too slow, and so forth. So definitely for me, putting aside a lot of that ego side was really important around being able to do that partnership as well, because from a digital perspective, we're always being pushed by our Chief Digital Officer to ship features into the hands of our customers, because we really don't like that big green giant who's up in Sydney who shall remain nameless, because they always seem to be able to ship things just a little bit quicker than what we can. And so the case study I'm going to talk about is actually coles.com.au. So we call it the customer unified shopping platform, which is a real mouthful, and it's not a very good word, or very good sort of term. But essentially, when we talk about coles.com.au, how we switch from, I guess, from a QA perspective towards a QE way of working. And I guess a big driver there was, from an actual engineering perspective, we managed to get all of our engineering practices in place. So we started off with trunk-based development. I mean, how many of you know about trunk-based development? Yep, so no git flow, no branches, no merge help, no, just straight to master. We have things around feature flags as well to be able to do this. We have great sort of unit test coverage and so forth. So from an engineering perspective, we're doing pretty well. And the way that we're structured for coles.com.au, we've got about 11 product squads, and so each of those product squads will have a product manager, product designer, engineers, QEs, and so forth. And from a coles.com.au, essentially it's based on sort of journeys. You kind of think about top of the funnel, you want to be able to attract and inspire your customers to your website or your app through catalogs or recipes, and then you go down towards how you actually allow customers to find products, to be able to build their basket, find specials and so forth, and then all the way through to that sort of checkout process, putting in your order, getting it sort of tracked through what happens when you get your order, and you can get the right products or the right substitutes and how you can apply for credits and stuff. So I feel like each of those teams is empowered with a particular part of that customer journey that they're looking for, or that they're looking after, the sort of metrics that they want to be able to push through. So for myself, we managed to push as much as we could, and we got it to a point around fortnightly deployments, which is pretty awesome, yeah. So I mean, most people would be sort of shipping sort of fortnightly as well. This is sort of at scale from around 11 product squads. But then we started to run into quite a few challenges. I mean, common ones that people will have will be around environments, yeah, lower environments availability within our ecosystem, because we've got so many different systems, always complex around being able to test through the different permutations, combinations, and then likewise, even from a test data, obviously test data is a challenging one, and once again, all the different sort of combinations as well. And then the other thing for me was, there was just a fear of shipping, pushing more, because everyone's like, no, we actually got to test that a little bit more, I'm not comfortable to sign off, because if we ship something and a customer can't shop, they can't search, they can't build a basket, okay, there's a revenue impact, but more so for myself, it's a customer impact, because you're going to lose your customers. And if you've ever had a really poor shopping experience, I don't think I've ever had one on Amazon.com, if I'm honest. So Amazon for me has always been flawless. I can't say the same about coles.com.au, but we are definitely a lot better. So when a customer has a bad experience, it's really, really hard to get them back. And it costs a lot to be able to retarget and get them back in there as well. And so for me, then it was a case of, all right, let's partner up. I know all the engineering side of things, but I'm happy to take guidance and assistance from the centralised quality function as well. And then if I kind of look at what were some of the things I guess that we took into as part of this transformation, and I think for me the first one that really sticks out is kind of those metrics, and that's what I really enjoyed from Shakshi's group as well, just ruthlessly looking at your processes and your metrics to see where are you actually falling down. So in terms of, okay, we've got environment issues or we've got test data issues, let's actually start to measure when those issues have happened, what are those type of issues, start to sort of build a bit of a taxonomy, start to understand where the problem points are. Likewise, even being able to, your release process, what are all the steps towards regression testing? Okay, let's start to measure that. So really take away a lot of the ambiguity. So for me, it really started off with the metric side around baseline activities as well, just so we had some meaningful, I guess, data points to be able to discuss through. Now, key one as well that Alan was talking about, standardization. I mean, who loves standardization? Anyone? maybe. I know a lot of engineers, they hate standardization. They're like, oh, I want to build my own thing, I want to do this. But I guess as Elena said, after someone's rewritten the same thing 50 times, because it almost goes like this, you kind of do it at the start, I can do this small proof of concept, and it's really exciting, and they actually do something, and then you're like, okay, how do we scale it? Can't do it, we can't scale it. So for me, I was really keen around what are the tooling you've got, what are the problems you've solved as well? Because I guess in the context of Coles, I mean, we're Coles Digital, yep, we're great, we've got all these channels, we're bringing all this revenue. But likewise, Shakshi and her group, they had that bird's eye view across all the other areas of Coles. And I wasn't going to try to solve those myself. So I was more than happy to, in terms of, okay, you've done all the evaluation, you've built these things out, you're solving these problems in all of these different areas. I'm happy to leverage that. And so that worked really, really well for us as well. And then definitely from a skill set perspective, around how do you transition individuals across from a QA to QE perspective as well, was really important for us to be able to do. And for me, a lot around mindset as well, and I'll get to the risk tolerance one as well. For me, just, I guess, always pushing the bounds, and maybe I'll go to the risk tolerance one. So I take a lot of risks in my role, so I'm always pushing the teams, always asking teams, why can't we do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? And for me, the mindset there is giving individuals, especially from a QE perspective, the permission that we can actually do this. Like there's no problem that's hard enough to be able to solve through. So really giving people the permission down there, and then likewise looking at what are some of the areas you feel that we can actually improve on, and then once again going through the centralized model as well for assistance around solving those problems as well. And you know, big one there definitely around partnership as well. Super key. Just keep the ego at the door. You know, there's always this thing: do I use a central function? Do I try to do it all myself? And for me, it really worked as a partnership. I know within my area with some of my other colleagues, they're a little bit more reserved. People were like, well, I own quality, why would I go to a centralized function? But for myself, I was like, no, there's a lot of thought leadership down there as well. And as Shakshi explained, she came in there that we're not looking to centralize testing. You will have your own testing quality down there, but you can then leverage a lot of the standards and frameworks that we have down there. Now I do love this slide, but bear with me, it is kind of all over the place. I think I'm probably going to paint this as well. This is in terms of my sort of continuous delivery evolution that I've got. I mean, we've all been here in terms of from a crawl perspective, where you're doing a lot of your big deployments, you know, based on milestones. We've hit milestone 1, it took us 12 months, we're going to do milestone 2, another sort of 6 months, and then you sort of move to what I call the cruise mode, where you're doing your monthly deployments as well. Yeah, so you're starting to get a little bit of a rhythm down there. And then likewise, you get into, I call the job phase, fortnightly deployments. Yeah, okay, we've got sprints, we can sort of deploy that. And that's kind of where we were for coles.com.au. So we were at fortnightly deployments, our change success rate was probably, would have probably been under 85%. So those of you that know the DORA metrics, hopefully, yeah, so they've got a great one in terms of change success rate that we've adopted. And then I guess as we were going from that QA to QE transformation, we then managed to push it into weekly deployments, so run. So where we completely broke away from the sprint model. It's not tied to any sprints, we can start to be able to ship through at scale, I guess, across all of those 11 squads. And everyone was kind of happy with weekly deployments. And then I think I went to Shakshi now, I think we can go faster. And so we did. So we went to twice a week deployments. We have on occasions gone to 3 times a week deployments as well. But for me, I'm kind of not satisfied. I want to get to daily or hourly. Now, is that appropriate? Maybe, maybe not. But the way I look at it is to always be able to push our teams on anything is possible. And the key one for me is I don't want to add extra work from a quality perspective. So all of these, I guess, hops that we've done, we've definitely reduced the effort that we spend from a quality perspective. Yes, the risk level has been raised slightly, but it is manageable as well. So that was one of the key things of moving along this path, is make sure, you know, A, we're not going to add more people, B, we're not going to take more time to be able to do this. So at each of these phases, we really started to reduce the amount of time that it takes to be able to start shipping your features and your products. And so where we got to, so definitely it's more than 100%. So if you think about it from a fortnightly deployment through to 2 to 3 times a week, so that's a massive improvement down there. If I look at the cycle time as well, so real reduction, I guess, in terms of from the testing effort around your releases as well. So some of on the fortnightly ones, we could take upwards of 3 days to be able to sort of release through, and it was like, that's too long. It's not going to scale when we go to weekly, it's not going to scale when we go to bi-weekly as well. So we've got that down pat to just a few hours, and it can be just with some individuals and also some scripts that we run through. And likewise, from a cost optimization, reduce that. So really around, I guess, shifting a lot of the work from a manual perspective into higher value areas around automation as well. Well, almost at the end. I think it's over to you, Shakshi.
Okay, Patrick, as we promised, thank you very much. I will come back for closing credits. That's all I do, is opening and closing, main actors days. I think what Patrick quite humbly did mention was, he did all of that work and we did not increase cost of quality. We actually reduced cost of quality, increased speed, and made sure that quality was not affected. So I did prove to you that triad is best possible. I did say there is a chance, and we've proven that in digital. All I would say is, if you do ever go on this journey, do it with everything you've got. Do it with passion, do it with passionate people who are absolutely in it with you and are on the same page and want to solve for the same problem. That's going to be key. So just go at it full on. Do not start small. I think the key thing that I would say is, don't pick a small problem. Pick a big problem that people care about and then go after it. Otherwise, a change of this nature is disruptive. Don't disrupt for the sake of disruption. If you've got a big problem, go after it with everything you've got. Don't just try to solve it in smaller places. A few templates here and there, a few standards here and there. Nobody cares about mandates nowadays. People don't like mandates. None of us liked to be locked down in COVID, did we? So in our daily words, we don't like that either. In summary, we will continue to evolve. We're not there yet. We've gotten close to quality engineering, and our next step is continuing to evolve and drive continuous quality. So we're doing a lot of work on continuous data now. Continuous testing is available. Continuous environments is going to be the next. And now we've got AI-driven metrics for those who do work to a standard. We've got that insight for them to be able to now also drive continuous test design using AI, which is our next step. We've already cracked the code in that one, thanks to some really amazing technical threads we've got in our teams. We are going to start doing automated test case design. So that's our next step, and that's where we wrap up. If you've got any questions, we're all here. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Any questions? Yep.
It's okay, I'll use my big mouth voice. Who's asking a question?
Who's it?
And the question may not be to me, so I will throw it.
Actually, the question is for you. You said the density of the metrics, right? When you product design had something shared goals. But if I put as one of the examples of defects, like of production leakages,
Mm-hmm.
how do you come to a conclusion that, okay, this metrics is a shared metrics? Because from a product point of view, it could be customer impact. From the business point of view, it will be revenue generation. So for me, a buck could be a
And having been on both sides of this conversation, right, so I fully appreciate it. And there's a whole process around making sure it's due to a testing gap that sits within the partner's remit, right? So if it's a testing gap, and there's a whole process around that, and there's a framework around that as well, to say it's only when a production incident is as a consequence of a testing gap, then that has that implication from a SLA perspective, right? So it's that nuance to it.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
So I think you had a question around, like, if I think about it from a product perspective as well. So yeah, you've got sort of defects, leakage that you happen as well. You tie, because from a product perspective, we're always looking at conversion. Conversion in a part of the customer journey as well. So what we'll do with the defect density or the leakage in production is tie that to that particular area, and then that's if you like, that becomes a shared glue between from an engineering, quality engineering and product as well perspective, because we all bleed. So if something goes into production, causes an issue, and then it is going to impact one of the key OKRs that we've got, and it could be around checkout conversion, it could be around how people build their trolley, and each of those teams have those ones that they're really hitting. So yeah, when we get a defect, we tie it to those areas, and then the product are very much aware, and that's, I guess, the glue that binds us.
Underpinning everything we spoke to is a lot of low-level detail as well to enact it, right? But in 45 minutes, we can't take you through all of the minutiae. But yes.
There's a question, yeah.
Not sure if this is the right question, but so when we have practice-based teams or communities of practice for testing, so migrating from that to quality engineering, so having that in your organization. So what's the biggest challenge you think is, and how do you overcome that? So migrating the teams from testing, normal testing team to a quality engineering, because that's what I wanted to understand.
Yeah, and we spoke a little bit about it, right? So there's two parts to that, right? There's the partner ecosystem, which can be transformed with a little bit more expedience, because you can have that conversation, you can have your consolidation, and you can drive that, right? But from, as I was also saying, there's a lot of really valuable domain expertise within your current testing workforce. So it's about finding those people that want to go on that journey, that want to take that learning pathway, that see and have that engagement in their own professional development and want to do that. They have to opt in. Like everything else we've spoken to, it has to be an opt-in. Right? And so what we've done is provide the pathway, we've provided the learning circle, provided that organic opportunity for them to hear from others and be excited by others already within that domain. And then, like I said, we've got critical mass now around that quality engineering cohort, so driving that community practice now, as well as the learning circle, as well as the learning pathway. So there's a multiplicity of factors. It's not just one silver bullet, right?
And also, I think the key thing is not everyone can be a quality engineer. You need correct, right? Then there is the balance between domain and quality engineering convergence. So that engineering mindset can still be learned. You don't have to be hands-on code. So that's where so our learning pathways are similar. So we've got a convergence pathway. So you understand how to engineer for quality, and you can direct it, you can work with it, you understand the domain. And then you are a quality engineer or practitioner who can actually engineer for quality in the software engineering lifecycle as a developer.
I was just going to add, definitely supportive from my end, from engineering as well, to be able to help people on the transition. But I guess it's key having the structure, the pathway, the learning circles, the knowledge sharing as well, and that you can really map that out. Otherwise it's really hard, you're kind of like, okay, how do I go from here to here? Well, you kind of do this and people sort of waddle the way through and then it kind of goes nowhere. So that's where really leveraging, I guess, the centralized function to actually have that and have that as a concrete steps that we can actually measure through. And as Shakshi said, not everyone can make that one necessarily that leap, but at least we've got the foundations there.
Thank you very much. This talk's been very interesting. I have a question. So when you started, you obviously came in and you didn't want to, came in to build a central function team and didn't want to build a central function team. What did you do as part of that, like, from before you started interacting with each of the different squads, different departments, with head of engineering for different product teams, like, what was the path to say, so you weren't going to mandate something, or how did you decide what you were going to build, and then at what point you were ready to kind of take that to the team and bring them on that journey? If you weren't the mandate compliance, I suppose.
Yeah, so it was a journey of about 3 to 6 months where we spent a lot of time talking to each of the engineering managers, the QE and the quality assurance teams already, who are in the system already, our partners, getting an opinion from them. We had 15 of them. Like, we had 15 providers who were providing testing capability to us. We spent a lot of time talking to the head ops who cared about what they wanted to care about. So there was a lot of effort in building an understanding of the ecosystem before I made a call to say, we are not going to centralize. You're asking me for the wrong answer. The centralization is not the answer yet. We've got some really good strength in individual capabilities, and they've got domain. And our domains are different. In a way, within us, we're about 15 business units. Supply chain is different to logistics, to replenishment, to digital, to stores. It's a very different ecosystem. Try and centralize it, you're just transferring the problem over. So we need to do it differently. So what was also interesting was, as I spent a lot of that time talking, I probably spoke to the same person about 5 times before we got to the point to say, who are we going to work with? Because you can't solve this all in one lot. It's not a one-size-fits-all, it's not a one-model-fit-all solution. We then spend some time to say, okay, here's the cost, here's the baseline, here's what we know. Anecdotally, we don't have a way of validating it, because when you don't have centralized functions, you centralize testing costs. So our ability to actually consolidate that view of how much do we spend on testing, what's the impact of testing on project costs. It took us a while to build that. So it was between a 3 to 6 months journey. So I started in October, and I think Feb is when I made the recommendation as to what do we do from here onwards. By then, we had established a baseline of what tools we had. And it was all talking to the engineers on the ground, the engineering managers on the ground, the QAs, the QA managers, the head ops, the people who cared and were in this journey. To then make a formal assessment of, and it wasn't a consulting assessment, we didn't go through a TMMI, we went and just did a paper-based talking, focus group conversations to say, we've got these domains, and these domains are kind of this level of maturity based on what we know. From a people, process, tech perspective, this is our tech thread, these are the tools, here are our gaps, and we put together a strategy that then focused on how do we help our teams deliver faster. That was our motto. We didn't say we're going to go and build the COE. We said we're going to be enabling our teams to build and deliver faster at the right cost of quality. And then we looked at 3 areas only. One was, how do we drive enablement and evolution? So which partners, which journeys will we partner with, which people will we partner with, and they had a very targeted journey. And everyone had their own timeline on that journey. Some of them subscribed, some of them didn't, because it wasn't necessary for them at the time. We said, we're going to work with your workforce first, we'll then give you the right tools. And then, through that process, because we've got numbers, we will then define that continuous testing, and we'll stop at automation for some, because you probably don't want to go on continuous testing because the tech doesn't allow for it. And then we said that 2 other areas we said was we've got gaps in tech. So we put together a tool strategy and a tech strategy to say these are the tool gaps that we need to fill. And we proactively built a roadmap around that. But again, we didn't go and say, we just want to buy tools. But we went and said, these are the use cases we will buy them for, to prove it out and then scale. So we didn't go and make $1 million investment in a tool, said, oh, this is an amazing tool for environments. We went and said, here is a problem statement, let's pick this use case and find something that's scalable if you do wish to scale it. And that's why GoLive, for example, is a plugin to Jira campaign. To say it serves the purpose for release management. We don't need to go and do environment management and buy a TEM solution. And the third thing we looked at was governance and measurement. For wherever we're doing whatever we're doing, we need to be very clear on what number we're targeting. So the simplest number we targeted was, let's identify, do we have automation in this organization? Macro. And then go one level lower to say, what's the coverage? Automation tick, but is there coverage? Is there enough breadth and depth of coverage? And all of that then became the plan that we went with, and then we picked advocates. Like, I'm sure Patrick and I would have chatted like 5 times before we came to that agreement to say, actually, you know what? We can work together and let's find that common ground. And we picked a few use cases like that. And some teams were voluntold because they were on our backyard. Poor guys, they felt bad. But hey, they're not unhappy with us anymore. So we're good. We haven't left an ambulance behind. And then there is still a journey. Because we, as I said, we can't solve it all in 2 years. We've got a lot of teams on this journey self-enabled now. What the good thing for me is this is a legacy. If I wasn't talking about it, somebody should be talking about it. And there's a lot of teams who started doing that on their own. That's enough. Because I think they're all thinking that way. That's a good starting position for us. Does that help? Clarify.
Thank you. No more question we can take due to time constraints once again. But thank you so much to all three of the speakers and